Hello, I'm Justin Lin, founder of BKC. Thanks for tuning in. Today I'm joined by Jai Lennard, a portrait photographer from California, but now based in Brooklyn. Man has shot covered for Billboard and The Hollywood Reporter and campaigns for Levi's, Converse, Warby Parker, you name it. He's our featured artist of the week on Relief Markt. And we've gotten to know Jai through a few community events here in the city and through our work with Seeing Collective. Jay's also participated in our Photo Cafe series of talks on the topic of diversity in the photo industry. So I was thrilled when he agreed to talk to me today. Hey, Jay, how are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Man, I'm hanging in there. I'm looking at things and trying to find hope.
It's always my initial response to be like, I'm great. I would love to block everything out at certain points, but it's obviously a crazy time.
Yes. Normally, we'd be getting right into talking about photography and the ideas and experiences behind the work. But I want to take a pause because we're looking at an astonishing moment in our nation's history. Today is June 7th, 2020, which marks the 13th day since the brutal killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis. Across the nation and the world, we've seen demonstrations, protests demanding justice, reform, accountability of the police, and an end to systemic racism. So with all that on the table, Jay, what's going on in your head right now?
So much. Right now, I'll be honest, I'm thinking about self-preservation. What am I doing for myself to keep myself sane, to keep myself active, and make sure that I'm making the most of my time right now. Despite how many crazy things are going on, there's an equal number of opportunities to take advantage and make changes right now. I feel like it's the perfect storm of a lot of bad things happening that puts the entire world on pause and would not otherwise allow us to kind of put our efforts and good foot forward and take the time to kind of make the changes that we need. So I'm really focused on that, and I'm focused on my personal cohort, my close collective of people in my bubble, and I'm focused on them, and I'm focused on influencing them and telling my story and kind of sharing a bit of myself, because I found that that really helps for perspective.
Yeah. Now, in your work, you create a lot of photography that emphasizes the Black style and identity. In your portraiture work specifically, now, how do you seek to portray these qualities in your work? Are there any particular influences or elements that you try to seek out when you show people in portrait photography?
Well, I'll first say I like that question as much as I hate it. And I will say this why, because part of my story is that I never shot Black work. In fact, I was told not to shoot it by my mentors. And my first mentors were Black. And not only were they Black, but they were in the media world and doing very well for themselves. So I was fortunate to have them guide me. But, that was back in, 2003 or 4. When we were having those conversations. And at that time, they made it very clear that if I was going to go down this road and also shoot Black subjects, that I would be stifled in my career. And as sad as that is, it didn't take me many years to realize later that they were telling me the truth. And I watched a lot of other photographers, unfortunately, Black, who, were stunted when showing their portfolios, and they had so many Black subjects. So the question is complicated for me. I never meant to shoot Black work. I just want to shoot. I shoot photography. I do shoot portraits. But the other part of that story is that, as I've kind of come into my own, it is important to me that I shoot Black subjects now, because the world has changed And not only do I feel like I have the opportunity to, but people really want to see it. And there's just a really great opportunity to do that. I'm always kind of looking for something that is classic and modern. That's usually what I'm thinking about. How do I make an image that lasts, but also feels contemporary? And I kind of approach that differently every time I meet a new subject, because it's also up to them what they're willing to give me. It's definitely a collaborative process, and me just kind of filling things out.
Now, I thought what you said there is very interesting about being instructed by your mentors not to shoot Black subjects. And I'm assuming they're saying like majority Black subjects in your portfolio as a representation of you. Can we talk a little bit about how that fits into our dialogue that we're having today? In the case of systemic racism, and how racism is not necessarily an independent moral failing on everyone's part, but more a kind of, I would say, global or national identity that has infiltrated so many different parts of our lives. How does that, do you think, relate to what you just told me?
You know, it's a shift. I've been talking a lot recently in the last 2 weeks about a collective conscious shift that we're in the middle of. It's part of our history to, believe certain things culturally about one another: Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, etc. So, it's a battle, especially for an artist who wants to represent themselves as an individual in this society, to make work knowing that they're not quite in control of the messaging once they release it, right? So, in retrospect, it's a mixed bag. It makes me sad to think that I was in that scenario. But it also makes me happy that I had the fortitude and the guidance to go down that path, knowing what I was doing and knowing what I was cultivating, so that I could get to this point where I have the community and I have the clients and general sort of respect in my field to now have these conversations and make it better for the generation that is now where I was in 2003, 2004.
So given the circumstances that we're seeing on the ground, as well as, reading things through the media, what are some positive things that you see happening right now?
Do you want to focus on positive stuff? We know a lot of crazy stuff is happening. Collective conscious shift. There's a lot of people right now thinking about the same thing. We're all kind of intertwined right now, focused on this one issue. And that makes a huge impact. I'm constantly thinking about my web of people and how we interact through social media and in person, mainly social media now because of COVID, and how much we're affecting one another. I think people love to be critical, especially New Yorkers. And my friends, we love to hate on Instagram in certain ways and say it's an echo chamber. But I think that's just one perspective. I think you can flip that same idea around and look at it and say, it's a spider web and we're all connected and we can latch onto each other. And when we do, we are so much stronger. Each person I think about that I affect, it's a rippling effect. And if they affect a few other people, it's getting the same message. I'm seeing that happen right now. And ultimately, I'm just seeing more people involved in this issue than there ever have been before. And that is really profound and amazing. And it really causes for change, not only like physically, but mentally.
Yeah, I feel like this is that ripple effect, kind of like throwing a stone into a pond, and the way it kind of like radiates outward is a good analogy for this moment, because I think this has been a week, 2 weeks maybe, like when we've been fully conscious and realizing what this moment is actually about. And that has extended beyond just the people who are participating in the protests to the people as far out as the NFL, which recently made a statement saying something that I never thought they would say. Black Lives Matter. We support the right of players to kneel and silently protest, is something that I honestly didn't expect from them. And there are numerous examples of that. Now, given that we are all engulfed in this moment, and we are all consciously aware of each other at this time and the needs of a large body of people, what are some challenges that we're going to see, especially down the road, that we need to prepare for?
I think a lot of the challenges we're facing are really just in front of us right now. Ultimately, it's always about power. It's always about struggle for power. And in our community, the larger photo community, we're focused on the issue of allowing the Black community to essentially have opportunity and access that they've been denied since the conception of this community. And I think now and later, we will face people who do not want to give up that power. And it's about allowing and sharing the idea that we really all can fit in this community and we really can all tell our stories. I think a lot of white photographers right now are afraid. They're afraid to say something. They're afraid to give up some power, because where does that leave them? They're afraid of change. We're human beings. These are all natural fears. But a lot of those fears come from the idea that we are not having conversations and sharing real context and information about how to handle this situation. Right now, we've only been in protests for like 10 days, something like that, just under 2 weeks. And there's obviously a lot of new media coming out again, right? Our Instagrams are sort of getting filled up again with new content. A lot of photojournalists out there across the states and around the world are pushing out new content. And right now, I'm looking at who's shooting that content, who's presenting that content, and who's deciding who's going to interact with that. New York Mag just put out their cover issue yesterday, and they decided to go with a white photographer. And that has nothing to do with the talent of that photographer. It has everything to do with the scope of the story and their choice to use and utilize their power to tell that story. And there's a few other magazines who've done the same thing. There's a lot of people, a lot of corporations, I should say specifically, that are coming out and saying, hey, Black Lives Matter. But if they mean it, then they would put something into action. And that's what we need right now. We need action. We need people to hire Black photographers. We need them to not just hire them, but we need to hire them for covers. We need to hire them for feature content to tell the stories that are important, that are being told right now.
I think that there's a definite need to fulfill the perspective of Black folks as both the artists depicting the image as well as the subject sharing their individual stories. And like you said, I think that people like us need to hold others accountable and to talk about it. Like, we can't necessarily make the decisions for them, but to have a conversation, even if it's just to question what are the reasons behind this decision, that can be helpful for people to understand how to move forward. Now, in light of that, like, I've had conversations among people in my community of different races. And I sense that a lot of people want to be allies of this movement. But they may not always know the best way. And they may make some wrong decisions, or they may be insensitive without even knowing it. How would you suggest they best demonstrate their support? And we're assuming these are people who genuinely do want to help.
Absolutely. I have so many friends in that position. And that's also because I mainly grew up in a white community. My suggestions always start digging for yourself. Like any other subject, the information is out there now more than ever before. It's easy to want to get handed information, but that's not always the best way to get it. Sometimes you have to earn it, and that means searching for it for yourself. And I deeply believe that in doing so, it is that much more fulfilling, and the context is so much more rewarding. So really it's about, action and purpose. Take action, do research, learn, and contextualize what you're learning. Think about it. Talk to your friends first about it before you go to your Black friends about it. And then when you go to your Black friends about it, have a conversation saying, hey, look, I've been reading on this. I've been thinking about it. I've been talking to my other friends about it. And now I'm curious about your opinion because I'm curious if I'm missing something. I think that's a really great way to go. There's a lot of people who really want to do good things out there. And it's really scary. No one wants to be wrong, especially in this time where, unfortunately, cancel culture is part of our culture. No one wants to get canceled. No one wants to get blocked or called out in public. These are all scary things. But ultimately, you're going to make mistakes. The United States does not teach race relations or the true history of race relations and racism, just like it doesn't teach how to do your taxes. They don't want you to know. It's a business, and they do make money off of it. So you're going to have to do the research for yourself.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the more I talk to people, the more I realize that, my knowledge is lacking and I need to learn more. So one thing that I following up on what you're saying, I'm a person of Asian American descent, or Asian descent, but born in America. And in my experience, there have been a lot of these similar but sort of tangential or parallel questions happening in our community for a long time as well.
Absolutely.
And they're unanswered. And a lot of them come from a very different place because for various reasons, the Asian community has been held up with the model minority myth, which for us has both been kind of a hidden sort of Trojan horse of sorts. So those conversations, which I believe are starting to happen within each independent community, which again brings us back to this question of community. How do we sustain it? How do we energize it? How do we feed it? So do you have any things that you've been reading that you felt have been very helpful in terms of your process?
In fact, it's actually a perfect time that you just came off of that. I'm going to reach off of screen.
Okay. We're going to do a plug?
Yeah, I'm going to do a plug. Minor Feelings by Kathy Park.
All right.
Kathy Park Hong. I mean, it's a really great book. I'm not fully done yet, but I've been learning about my culture for years. I have to do that just like everyone else. The information is not there, so you have to go search for it. But because I am Black, I've been been forced to sort of do that research for a long time now. And there's way more to go, but I found that reaching out into other groups really puts context to my history. I love reading about Asian Americans. I love reading about the Irish. I feel very connected personally to both. The struggle is so similar. We have such a long history. And it's also so sad that we've been pitted against each other. I think right now, especially talking about communities coming together and also going back into to their own communities to really learn and relearn and talk and discuss about how we can open up. I think that's happening right now. And I think especially in the Asian American community, because we're so close, I'm definitely talking to all my Asian American friends about this. Reading about the nuances of being an Asian American in America really gives me sort of another layered perspective that I need to understand myself and our history more.
I mean, I have not read the book, but that sounds like a really great point of view, is to engage with another, maybe less familiar group's experience and tie that into your own, Right at the moment, I'm actually reading White Fragility.
Oh, awesome.
Which I think is, it's a pretty good call-out book, but I think it's more interesting to see it as a sociological documentation of a condition, like a group condition. And so rather than thinking of it strictly in terms of white versus everyone else, it's really like, well, what's going on in your group? I've kept finding ways to associate the Asian experience in America to some of the fears that trigger white fragility, because some of them are also, you can see evidence of that within our communities. So each of these things can be very important in independent ways. And then as far as like, how do we kind of take the next step once we've, begun educating ourselves further? Are there direct actionable steps that you've been taking, whether it's, have you been out on the protests? Have you been, taking more of a journalistic line? What have you been doing as far as your action over the past week?
I'll first say that when the protests came about, I live in Clinton Hill, so I guess the second night of protests, which is the first night for New York, a lot of the images of like burning cars and stuff, that was like in Fort Greene, just near me. That protest, that march came down just around the corner from me. I've been harassed by police. I've been taken in by police. It's an incredibly scary thing. But I gotta say, on a personal note, like watching that march and seeing the aggressiveness of the cops, like I've really never been more scared in my life. So I haven't really been out. I've been just protecting myself and allowing people who can do what they do. But if it comes to a time where I need to step out, I will. So with that said, I have been really focused on running my platform, Color Positive, and engaging with as many people as I can. For the last week, I've been up at 6 a.m. and I don't go to bed till 2 a.m. And a few days ago, I didn't sleep for 2 days. It's incredibly, incredibly busy right now. And I'm not taking every single call and message, but I'm taking a lot because I'm inundated. And I have a lot of people whom I know do care about me, but do need guidance. And not all Black people feel the same about giving that guidance. I want to put that out there. It's not our responsibility to teach. But I am in the position to do so. I do have the energy, and I do make that choice to do so. So that's where I've just been putting a lot of my time, allowing people to be able to reach out and sharing my perspective and just giving as much of my input as I can to hopefully get people in the right frame of mind and affect the other people around them.
Yeah, I just want to echo that. I think that a lot of people don't realize that we all each have a finite amount of time and energy to spend on anything. And at this time, I'm sure a lot of people are wanting to seek the counsel of their Black and brown friends, which totally understand and appreciate. But there is the finite time element. So we have to be respectful of how much time we take. Just like I feel very appreciative that you're taking this time with me, so I don't want to take too much of that time. Obviously, you have a lot of things going on. Before we break up, I just want to do at least one thing from our normal program, which is to go a little bit in detail about one of your photos. All right.
Yeah, of course.
Now, normally I pull something from Relief Markt, but is there one that you'd like to share with me right now that speaks a little bit to either your process as a photographer or maybe a little bit about the, subject nature that you try to approach.
Yeah. Should I throw it into the chat, or how do you want to do that?
You can share your screen with me and just talk.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. That works. Let me do that. Let me just close a few things before I share.
Take your time.
Thanks.
Well, we all got to do a little, clean the house before guests come over thing.
Right. Exactly. Let's see here. So, a week ago on Monday, actually the day that George Floyd was killed, I had already planned to go out and, excuse me while I multitasking with this image, and go out and do and make some images. I hadn't been out since March. I've been really, really good the entire time, and I was just starting to feel like, okay, like I gotta step away now. I gotta step out. I gotta be able to like be creative. I need to see someone else. So excuse me while I just get the right image. 1 second. So I connected with a really good friend of mine, Marjan Carlos, who is a writer and journalist. And ultimately, I was like, you know what, we just need to get out and like, desktop. I've actually never shared before, so I'm also like figuring out how to share. There we go. Is that good? Can you see me?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I decided that, I really wanted to meet with Marjan so that I could take her portrait because she's just such a talent. I ultimately, whatever race you are, want to uplift voices and stories of people who are marginalized. I obviously empathize with that. That's where I feel most powerful. So yeah, I was trying to figure out how to do this. I don't normally shoot without a lot of lights. I'm a big lighting guy. I like doing it. Even though I do sometimes shoot natural light, I prefer to shoot with lights. I like to be in control. There's also the COVID scenario. So, trying to figure out how to be in a space that was safe for us. We ended up going outside, and I basically set up a huge velvet backdrop. And this is all natural light, but we just kind of wanted to play. I didn't want to think too hard about it, but as I said before, my aesthetic, I usually like to start from something classic and then kind of bring it in something modern. So usually the classic part is like my set. I love using canvas. I love using tactile materials that have texture. Over the years, I've kind of steered away from paper backdrops. And we just kind of played for an hour. But we got some really great images, and I just really, it was just really special for me, to be honest. It was exciting to be outside. It was exciting to be with Marjan because she's such a special person and great personality and just great soul. I got to create these images for her that she can use. And then I get to also tell her story and my story a little bit, which is how I normally kind of post when I'm sharing new images. Yeah, and like I said, it only took an hour. I hired a driver that I've been using for like 6 years. I have a close relationship with him. He takes me to all my jobs, and I hired him for the afternoon. And he acted also as my assistant, so there was like less people, and he helped me set up in the car while I had all my stuff out, and Marjan and I did our thing.
That's amazing. I love that one from 2 ago with a bit of motion blur with their hands up in the air. That was really stunning. And
awesome, thank you.
Also, given that we've been on the phone now for about 30 minutes, and this is the first time we've even mentioned the pandemic.
I know.
That's crazy.
It's
But
crazy.
it's dominated my conversations with artists in the past. So with that in mind, I'd just love to hear, like, what is some of your advice for a photographer right now who is trying to do a shoot, portrait shoot specifically?
A portrait shoot?
Yeah.
Wow.
How did you feel safe doing this shoot, in other words?
Okay, well, yeah. For the first thought is safety. And that means that I'm likely not going to be inside. I mean, I think there's certain circumstances. If obviously you've already been, in quarantine with someone, or maybe you both just got tested for antibodies and like you decide to get together, that's great. But if you're completely in the dark, then just it's good to be as safe as possible. So for me, I was like, okay, I need to get out. I need to do my thing. Okay, it's probably going to be outside, but where's that going to be? So then I'm scouting for about a week about where could this be. Fortunately, Marjan lives across the street from the Armory in Bed-Stuy. So I was like, oh, there's this empty, huge wall space in the sidewalk. This is kind of perfect. Also because of COVID, I'm thinking, there's not going to be that much traffic. So it was really about taking my chances. And that's what a lot of, when you're in New York, even with clients sometimes, you end up just taking a few chances when you're on the street. So, yeah, that was my first thought. And then just as little people, as, small a crew as possible. And after that, it was just about, okay, can I keep my distance? Let's figure this out. Yes, this was about me emotionally, mentally, physically kind of getting behind the camera again, but it was also a test for me because I am talking to clients right now. I have clients who do want to get back to work. I feel very fortunate that we're having open conversations about what that's going to look like, and that, they want to work with me. But that's what's going on. So I'm also trying to prepare myself to being on set with real clients and working again with crews. And that's going to take practice of all sorts, practicing wearing a mask, practicing wearing gloves, seeing how and when to switch those things out. It's a huge learning curve. And this is what that was for me. But I had the space to do it. So I felt comfortable. Ultimately, I felt like halfway through the shoot, at a certain point, you just decide, okay, I'm out here, I'm doing my thing. I'm going to stop worrying about all the things and just get the job done. And then when the job's done, you stop everything, kind of look around and be like, okay, now how do I take care of myself again?
Great. I mean, congratulations on making it happen. I feel like it's good for people to start striking out so that they can create an example for others. And also just thank you so much for joining me on this. It's really illuminating. I really appreciate you taking the time to share with our community how you've been responding to this, and it's essentially to help us to find new ways to look at this situation. So for that, I'm very thankful. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for having me. I really appreciate you asking me. Yeah.
So Jay, I mean, in the future, I hope we can get together in person and share a little bit more about what's been going on and share some time together. But in the meantime, keep doing what you're doing. I support you.
Thank you so much. The same with you. Be safe.